Hi, thanks for joining me. Thanks for taking an interest in my skateboarding videos. My name's Neil Hester, and today I'm going to try and explain to you how I get 50-50 grinds in bowls and pools. So yeah, if you've been following my recent videos skating my favourite pool at Crystal Palace, you'll see that I finally managed to get some quite nicely locked in 50-50 grinds around the middle pocket. It's kind of a quite round pocket in the pool. So this pool consists of a deep end that's about 8.5 feet deep. It's got half a foot of vert. And then there's a middle pocket that's got the same kind of transition. It's actually a little bit tighter, and it's not quite vert at that point, but it's very steep. And then there is a square kind of end that is a lot shallower. It's kind of a nicely proportioned pool, not too tight and gnarly to learn stuff on, but you know, tight enough to be a challenge. So yeah, I was completely stoked to get some 50-50 grinds right round that pocket. And if you haven't seen that video, go back a couple and check that out, and you'll see what I mean. Now luckily I managed to continue to keep getting grinds in that pocket, so you'll see some now from the following week after. And I'm just going to try and explain how I get them, or how I managed to finally get them after a lot of trying. So let's first take a look at a couple of the grinds just so that you can see how I'm doing them. The first one I popped out the top, and I'll explain about that in a minute. And then the second one I got a nice good one. So let's take a look at those first. So there you go, that's what I consider like my perfect kind of grind. I come and approach it very wide, carve into it, lock in diagonally with my wheels, and just kind of lock around and hold that pose till I get a decent way around, and then just dip back in. And it seems to be the formula that works for me. So I'll try and explain kind of step by step the bits that were most important to it all kind of clicking together and working. The first thing is speed. So I don't know about anybody else, but I feel way more comfortable attacking something with a lot of speed. And I've said in a previous video that speed can be scary, but to me it's a lot safer, because if you fall going slow, you've only got one way to go, and that's straight down and you splat on the floor. If you're going at a decent amount of speed, you're not only going down, but you're also, you know, you've got sideways motion as well. So when you do fall, you kind of skip across the surface like a stone skipping on water, if you know, skim a stone across water. So it takes some of that impact out, and it's actually far less painful, the fall. You know, you might tumble or whatever, but to me, it's far less of an impact because you've got that kind of lateral motion as well as the downforce. So it feels a lot safer. But also, if you attack tricks at greater speed, they most often actually happen a lot better, because the kind of force is working against the friction. So something like a grind, you know, you've got the friction of your trucks on the coping. If you go very slow, you're far more likely to just lock up and get thrown off. If you're going fast, the friction has a lot less chance of kicking in, and you end up getting your motion and getting your grind. So I know it's a mental battle to kind of just throw yourself straight at something with a lot of speed, but to be honest, the more speed, the better. It just helps. So that's the first thing, speed. Now second is going to be the kind of angle of attack. And a lot of people, when they're trying to do 50-50s or most often axle stalls, they'll head straight at the coping, direct on, and then do like a 90-degree turn and latch on and stand up. And you know, that's fine for an axle stall. That's absolutely perfect. But if you're trying to actually do a grind, you need to promote some lateral movement. You need some direction along the coping. And so going straight at the coping and doing a 90-degree turn you're just gonna stop dead because you've got no lateral movement. In a pool, at least, and in my experience on mini ramps and vert ramps as well, you have to come at it with a much wider angle to promote the lateral movement of, if the coping is here, promote the lateral movement of continuing along the coping. If you just go straight at the coping head on, and even by going really, really fast, you'll do your 90-degree turn, but you'll just overbalance and pop out the top. That's kind of what I did in the first clip, where I came round and I carved wide, but as I carved, I kind of stood up too much. I was leaning back so much that I popped out the top. So to stay in and keep the grind, you need to carve wide and ride into it, really. Much like if you were just doing a carve kind of slash grind, you need to ride into it almost parallel with the coping and just promote yourself onto the coping so that you can take that energy, that directional energy, and follow through with the grind. Now, the difference between doing a kind of carve grind or getting like a stand-up 50-50 is that you've just got to allow yourself to give into the kind of centrifugal force of going around fast. It's going to be pulling you backwards, and that's actually what gets you to stand up. If you're carve grinding, you're leaning right in and you're kind of going almost horizontal in midair as you come around the coping. If this is your body, as you come around the coping, you're kind of leaning in and you're just slashing like that. If you're coming around fast enough and the centrifugal force can take you to help you stand up, if you just allow yourself to lean back a little bit as you go, it will bring you to stand up. And then all you've got to really do is balance between the stand up and not leaning too far back and popping out the top. So that's kind of point 3, is just keeping the balance. So point 2 is angle of approach and carve wide enough that you ride onto the coping in a great flow. You don't kick turn onto the coping, you kind of ride onto it in a bit of a flow. It might be a kind of micro kick turn going on, but not anything like you would to do an axle stall. So very wide and ride onto it and through it as if you're rolling into it like a carve grind. So the point 3 is kind of to allow yourself to stand up. So let your body weight kind of come back with the centrifugal force and allow yourself to stand up. And then point 4 really is the lock-in, and people do this in different ways, and I see most people do their lock-in by having their heel side wheel hanging on the edge of the coping, like the top half of the coping, and their toe side wheel is up against the underside of the coping. So they're kind of going around like that with their grind, so their nose is pointing up in the air and their weight is on their heel, kind of pushing down on the coping into the ramp or the bowl. Now, me, I'm strange, maybe strange. I seem to be in the minority, but I do the absolute opposite. So if we look again at my slow motion clip, you'll see that I come round and it's actually my toe side back wheel that is right up against the underside of the coping, and my heel side wheel on the front truck is against the top side. So I'm kind of diagonally pointing down into the ramp rather than up. So a lot of people, they come around pointing upwards, leaning on their heel to go around. I actually point downwards and I have body weight on my front truck heel wheel, and I use my toe side wheel at the back to stay against the coping. So I lock in diagonally the opposite way to a lot of people. But for me, it kind of lends itself to kind of smoothly going back into the surface, back into the pool again. The way that most people do it kind of lends itself to mini ramp tricks, and it probably comes from riding mini ramps and doing things like 5-0s and more mini ramp style tricks. And to me, the way that I do it is much more towards pool skating and kind of continuing the carve back down in. So my re-entry back in again is really smooth because I'm already heading that way. And it actually helps me, the lock in that way helps me stay locked in because I can just grind around and just kind of dip my nose, and I just stand still. Once I've got the lock, I stand completely still and I just let the motion carry me. And then at the point that feels right, I just give a little dip and kick turn back in. So to me, it's a very smooth motion, and strangely, I've always done it that way since I first learned to do these grinds round corners in bowls. It's just continued that way. So my lock-in is perhaps unconventional, and it more looks like it's going to be something like a backside Smith grind. If my front wheel came off the coping and allowed my rail to go down, it would be a frontside Smith. Maybe it would be easier for me to get frontside Smiths eventually, but that's kind of how I do it. So then I guess we're really at the final point, which is just rolling back in. So you kind of feel, as you're grinding around, you feel yourself begin to slow down and feel when the time is right to dip back in. And you know, I'm so into trying to get the longest grind possible that I stand there for as long as possible and let the grind just follow through. And so you'll see in the next few clips on the flat wall, which is very different from the round wall. The round wall kind of holds you in, and that centrifugal force kind of sucks you against the coping. On the flat wall, you've got to try and lean in and stay in, otherwise you very easily overbalance out the top. And that's kind of what I do a lot of the time here, where I grind for too long, lose my point of entry opportunity and have to just kick the board out. So yeah, it's a different thing depending on whether it's a round wall or a flat wall. But the bottom line really is that you need to carve into it. Shoulder rotation is a really important thing, so you need to make sure that as you come round and you carve round, you get that front shoulder round as well, ready to roll back in. If you leave your shoulders too open, you're not going to turn enough to get back in. So you've got to carry your shoulders round with the motion of the board and where you want to go. And it's the same thing with almost any skateboarding trick. Wherever your leading shoulder will point is where you're going to go. So if you're learning, stick your arm out as you go and point yourself where you want to go. As you come round and grind, keep rotating and bring that shoulder around, and that'll carry you around and back in again. So yeah, that's really it, and that's how I got to end up doing them. And hopefully that gives you some help if you're trying to do them as well, or if you just wanted some insight as to how you even managed to do them. Hopefully, you know, it's useful or interesting to some people, and let me know what you think in the comments below. And as ever, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. So take care. Cheers.